Okay, so let's dive right into this. Most of us are walking around with a completely, fundamentally flawed assumption about our own brains. We tend to think that IQ is just fixed from birth. The common belief is kind of like you're born with a certain baseline level of intelligence, your genetics completely wrote the number, and you just got to live with whatever hand you were dealt, right? But modern neuroscience, it's showing us a completely different and honestly incredibly hopeful picture. Here is the reality check. Cognitive decline, it doesn't just arrive out of nowhere like some sudden collapse. Actually, it builds quietly. It happens not through one dramatic life event, but through these small, barely noticeable daily habits that slowly chip away at your brain's processing power. We're talking about mental coasting, the wrong diet, too much sitting around. Each one barely registers in the moment. But man, day by day, they really stack up. And that brings us to the core insight of today's explainer, cognitive reserve. Think of cognitive reserve as essentially your brain's shock absorber. It is your brain's ability to cope and keep working properly, even in the face of physical damage or just the natural aging process. What most folks don't understand is that our daily behaviors act as the architects of this reserve. Every single day, you're either actively building your cognitive reserve up or you are slowly dismantling it. Let's see how this builds. Today, we are going to walk through 4 science-backed ways to protect your intelligence, moving your body, challenging your brain, protecting your sleep, and never stopping your learning.
Way number 1, move your body, and how exercise literally changes your brain.
Now, most people relegate exercise to just physical health, right? They think it's strictly for their heart or lungs or their waistline. We rarely think of breaking a sweat as a primary IQ protector, but it is absolutely time to dismantle that idea. Take a look at this number. A sweeping 2024 meta-analysis published in the journal Pediatrics looked at randomized controlled trials using an exercise as medicine approach. And get this, they found that subjects in exercise intervention groups experienced an overall 4-point increase in their IQ scores compared to control groups. Now, 4 points might not sound earth-shattering at first glance, but to put that into perspective, a 4-point jump is the exact same magnitude of IQ increase associated with an entire additional year of formal education. Picture this scenario. You've been sitting at a desk for 8 straight hours. By 3 p.m., your brain feels completely fogged over. You probably assume it's just, natural fatigue, getting older, or a sign you desperately need more coffee. But what is actually happening? Your brain is desperately missing the physiological signals that trigger neuroplasticity. Compare that heavy, stagnant feeling to the absolute clarity of taking a brisk 20-minute walk outside in the fresh air. Night and day, right? And this brilliantly illustrates the underlying biology at play here. When you move, your body promotes the release of neurotrophic factors. Now, these are vital proteins that literally support the survival, development, and optimal function of your neurons. Physical activity triggers these proteins alongside epigenetic changes that enhance neural efficiency. In plain English, moving your body quite literally helps your brain's wires fire faster and much more efficiently. And hey, you don't need to be training for an ultra-marathon to reap these cognitive rewards. The most common regimen yielding these massive IQ protections in the studies was remarkably accessible, just 30 to 60 minutes, 3 to 5 days per week. This is a highly actionable, totally repeatable standard. So the next time you think about skipping a walk, remind yourself, you aren't just moving your muscles, you are actively protecting your intelligence. Way number 2, challenge your brain. Novel activities versus familiar puzzles. A lot of people mistakenly think that familiar mental games, like, say, your daily Wordle or a comfortable Sudoku puzzle, are enough to keep their mental edge sharp. But all mental activity is definitely not created equal. Take the ACTIVE trial funded by the NIH. Tracking nearly 3,000 participants, they found that structured cognitive training reversed between 7 to 14 years of age-related cognitive decline. And it gets even better. Those who received booster training sessions actually saw their reaction speeds outperform 80% of their peers a full decade later. This translates to real-world protection, literally reducing their risk of car crashes by a staggering 50%. So picture this. You spend 20 minutes doing the comfortable crossword puzzle you've mastered over the years. You're fast, it feels great, you feel super productive. But biologically, your brain is on autopilot. No new neural connections are forming. Now, contrast that with the messy, frustrating struggle of trying to learn a completely new language or picking up photography. That struggle, that exact friction, is what your brain needs to force new growth.
It's the classic use it or lose it principle, but with a major twist. The it has to be novel. Structured cognitive training involves targeted, progressively difficult exercises that build new neural pathways purely through novelty. For example, the Synapse Project at the University of Texas found that older adults who took up new, demanding hobbies, like digital photography or quilting, showed measurable cognitive improvements in just 3 months. Meanwhile, those who stuck to familiar activities, they showed absolutely none. So, I want you to adopt this short, repeatable question whenever you're choosing your next mental activity. Ask yourself, is this hard? Is this new? If it's not pushing you slightly out of your comfort zone, you aren't really building cognitive reserve. You're just passing the time. You've got to switch it up. Way number 3, protect your sleep. Why chronic stress is a cognitive eraser. Now, what's really interesting about this is we often brush off feeling mentally foggy as just the cost of doing business, right? But studies show chronic stress actually reduces your mental capacity. Look at the sheer physical impact of this. When you're chronically stressed or poorly rested, you dysregulate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, or HPA axis. This leads to a flood of elevated, toxic cortisol levels in your brain, and that cortisol physically damages the hippocampus, the exact brain region critical for memory formation and learning. So unmanaged stress physically attacks the structures your IQ depends on.
Picture this stark contrast. You're sleep-deprived, intensely anxious about a deadline, and you decide to just, push through by working late into the night. You are quietly and visibly eroding your cognitive reserve. Now contrast that with committing to peaceful, restorative rest. One massive study found that people who regularly challenged their brains delayed Alzheimer's by about 5 years. But here's the kicker. That protective effect was only possible when their sleep and mental health were also supported.
This leads us to a profound, paradigm-shifting action step. You have to stop sacrificing your sleep for the illusion of productivity. Please remember this phrase: rest is not laziness, it is cognitive maintenance. When you ignore anxiety to just push through, you are actively reducing your IQ. Way number 4, never stop learning, building a cognitive fortress across a lifespan. Honestly, this might be the most powerful habit we cover today. Too many of us fall for the trap of thinking brain health is only something you need to worry about in your twilight years. But picture this multi-generational scene. A 10-year-old child struggling to learn the piano. A teenager deeply engrossed in reading a challenging new book. An adult awkwardly fumbling through their first lessons on a new instrument. Now, none of them are actively thinking about protecting their IQ, but through a rich variety of early and continuous activities, they are building denser neural networks and way more efficient processing pathways. They are building what researchers call a cognitive fortress. A fascinating 2021 study in the Journal of Cognitive Enhancement looked at adults in their 60s and 80s, and they traced their cognitive health back to enriching activities they did before the age of 13. Furthermore, a 2024 Buck Institute study confirmed that continuing to learn entirely new things later in life adds even more irreversible layers to this cognitive reserve. And here is the really great news. You do not need to become some academic scholar to build this fortress. The simple act of choosing to be a beginner, especially when it feels frustrating and super uncomfortable, is the absolute strongest signal you can send to your brain to keep building. The mandate is simple: never stop learning something new. So the crucial point is this: your intelligence isn't some fixed number printed on your DNA. It's a living, breathing asset that you have the power to protect every single day. The 4 habits are clear. Move your body for 30 to 60 minutes a few times a week. Constantly ask yourself, is this hard? Is this new? When engaging your mind. Treat your rest as absolute non-negotiable cognitive maintenance. And never, ever stop learning something new. Your brain is absolutely worth protecting. I want to leave you with a direct question. Which of these 4 habits will you choose to focus on to build your cognitive reserve today? Let me know by dropping your chosen habit in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown helpful and want more structured, science-backed explainers just like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Keep learning, keep moving, and I'll see you in the next explainer.